microphone or it's better? Yeah, we need. Okay. All right. So we'll start with time. I think we are okay. Okay. So we'll talk about today DDoS case study and with OpUkraine and OpIsrael, Operation Ukraine and Operation Israel, and we'll discuss a little bit about what we see in the recent month, as the new wave of, we call it web DDoS, tsunami attack, and we go into the details and the attributes of the attack. So a little bit of overview, what we see in the cybersecurity. So the digital transformation, that we talked in the last few years. We know that it's here, right? The applications are the center of the organization. And with that, come a change in the structure of the application, right? The applications are not as a holistic, as a single as it used to be, the legacy application, right? They are all distributed. And with that come, the change to protect it. You need to protect the application, not only the front end, the back end, the client side, with all the attack surface that we all know. I want to go into details because we don't have much time, so I will talk fast on that. So there is a huge need, to protect the applications on all levels, whether they are in the, local on-prem, in public, private cloud, and we see how that affects, the organization. So we need to protect, the applications wherever they are, right? More, in the cloud, multi-environment, multi-cloud. 99% of the organizations are used at least a single cloud, whether private or public, and some of them are using multi-cloud. We are, moved from the network, the corporate network, to protect the corporate network, into the cloud, into the application. And with that attacks, the level and the need to protect it, we need to protect, encrypted level attacks, applications that are resides, in on-prem or public, private cloud, distributed. So there is a need to protect over there as well. And in all levels, network, application, user level, and the client side as well, right? And we will talk about it, but mostly I want to, focus on the on what we see on Operation Ukraine and Operation Israel and the new wave of attacks. So we need to protect the applications. We have more applications to protect, more environments, more access, level of the attack surface, more access and access points to the application, and more sophisticated attacks. Right? We talked, we've heard from many vendors as well as from Radware, how the attacks are becoming more complex in terms of the volume and the sophistication. Morphing attacks, we will see that. And with that challenge, we have less people. Right? The lack of people, the lack of expertise, and that, trigger, or that, gave, Radware the thing to automate the things, to basically reduce the overhead, the operational overhead from the customer point of view. Okay. And we need to think about how to protect the application that are more sophisticated, how to do it, automated procedure, because lack of people. And that's the outcome, right? You need to rethink about the defense strategy. The applications are more agile, and with that comes the challenge, to protect. Because the attacks are more complex and sophisticated, and we will see that. Okay, so that's the general overview, and now we will go into the details, what happened in general, globally, and then Ukraine and Israel in the last, let's say, 6 months. What we see up to a year. So a little bit, this is an interview. I'm not going to show the whole interview, but this is an interview, a short introduction, what the Chief Digital Transformation from Ukraine is saying, the level of the sophistication of attack, and this is a true discussion that we had with with the Ukrainian government that is responsible for the digital transformation in Ukraine, and we protect the Ukrainian government, so we were able to publish it. It's not a secret.
So leading up to the 2022 invasion, what kind of cyber attacks did Ukraine experience?
Well, again, up to NotPetya attack, which I mentioned, that was a more or less quiet period for 4 years when Ukraine was able to build a comprehensive and robust national cybersecurity system. So we were prepared to the invasion and to escalation of cyber aggression. And that was done together with our partners within different frameworks of international technical assistance projects. And there was a serious attention from the government and from country leaders to cybersecurity issues. But on January 14th, 2022, cyber attack on Ukrainian government websites was organized, and we consider this as a starting point for cyber component of this hybrid war, which includes full-scale invasion. Cyber attack, which I mentioned, was later followed by a huge DDoS attack on the Ukrainian financial sector and government websites, and there was a huge attack on satellite communication system Viasat in the first hours of the full-scale invasion in February 2024.
Okay, so interesting. Attacks on their satellites that affected their network. So a global overview on the bad actors and the target organizations globally, and then we'll dive into Ukraine and Israel. So this information is from our private cloud, Cloud DDoS, Cloud WAF, and Bot Manager, and Deception Network that we build around the world. And what we see, the main actors globally. So probably you heard about Anonymous Sudan and No Name 05716. These are the main actors, bad actors, as we see around the world. Obviously, there are some others, but these are the Mysterious Team Zero also. The difference between the bad actors is that No Name, roughly, right? It's not, each case is different, but roughly we see that No Name 05716 are generating more volumetric attacks, less sophisticated. They're just trying to drain, the internet pipe and take the website or the country down if it's a state level of attacks. And Anonymous Sudan are really sophisticated. They are more targeting the resource on the application. They do the reconnaissance, and trying to, evade and trying to see the vulnerability and the weakest point on the application, and then they attack the application to bring down. It doesn't mean that it needs to be volumetric, high volume, in terms of bandwidth, but it could be very, let's say, large scale in terms of the transactions per second or requests per second, what we say RPS. So these are mostly on the volume, and Anonymous Sudan mostly sophisticated attacks that relate to the application. Multi-million requests per second to bring down the application, front end, back end, and we will see how it relates to web DDoS, because they are really use encrypted based attacks to pass, all the firewalls and the web application firewall. So all the traditional, tools, security tools that you have are practically useless. It's not that we don't need them, but they are not let's say, designed to deal with this kind of attacks. So we will see in a second how it's done and what are the details of the attack. In terms of, top targeted attacks, top targeted organizations, so we see, across all organizations, finance, healthcare, government, a lot of government, because of the Ukraine-Russian conflict. It affects, the level of attacks on the government. You see 20% But this is global, okay? Not only in Europe, this is a global statistics. And so basically all sectors are affected. And you don't see here service providers, because service providers relates to any sector, right? They can target the government, but the whole infrastructure of the service provider can be affected because of that, if it's volumetric. Okay, let's dive into what happened in Ukraine, operational Ukraine. So it all started with the Russians, right? We know that. And that happens, last year. So the level of the attack, when it started, generated 400 gig of DDoS attacks, and including application layer DDoS attacks. Okay? Ukraine government quickly, approached Radware to protect the Ukraine government, and we have done that successfully so far. And they basically disrupted, the critical resources or the critical infrastructure of the Ukraine government. And what really good to mention that from that point, we see that the same attacks, mostly related to, let's say, web-based attacks and web DDoS attacks, are now we see across all the globe. In the US, in Canada, in Germany, in Poland. Poland is heavily targeted. Scandinavia are also targeted heavily, and we see the same level of attacks that we saw last year on Ukraine. So it started over there, and we see how it evolves to other countries as well. Obviously, there is no need to mention Israel as well. We are under attack constantly. So moving forward. So you see the bad actors. This is specifically to Ukraine. No name 05716. As I said, mostly volumetric attacks to bring down the critical infrastructure. And let's say this is the most sophisticated one that involve also the cyber army of Russia. Cyber army of Russia also claim to have let's say less 45% of the attacks on Ukraine. They are also more volumetric, more related to volumetric attacks. Okay, and targeted, again, government, business, and economy to really bring down the country. All the critical infrastructure. It could be utilities, healthcare, government, obviously, and financial services as well. What we see, going into more detail, so it began on March 2022 with, you see, low sophistication in terms of the DDoS attacks, but around 400 gig of attack traffic, volumetric, not really high sophistication. Then it continued on October, November 2022 with bot and application-based attacks. Bot attacks that are really targeted on the user level. These are not on the protocol level, HTTP, but really on the user level, and to evade all the security tools. Web application firewall will not be able to detect this kind of attack. It's above, it's over the protocol level. It's really on the user level. 2 million requests per second. Again, transactions, these are not related to the bandwidth. And we mitigated, these statistics are from our private cloud. Cloud DDoS, Cloud Bot Manager, Cloud WAF. Over 12,000 attacks in 2022 that are successfully mitigated by Radware Cloud. Then, in December, another wave of attack in December, January, 6 months ago, which is even less. Multi-vector attacks. These are the more, related to the web DDoS, as we see, and we will see, in a second what it means. But also volumetric floods. 50 gig, high rate, 38K of requests per second. This is relatively small, but it can bring down the server and the application very easily. Okay, these are the statistics. You see, from the portal, you see the level of the attack and avoid it. Okay? You see here another, angle from the attack, peak of 250 gig of attack traffic. Okay? That happens on the Ukraine government, and you see this level of attack. Here, what you see basically is what we call burst attacks. Very high volumetric attack, but very short on time. So by the time, if you have any kind of out of path or net flow based solution, this will not work. You see, it's like couple of minutes and even seconds. I can maybe zoom out later, but you see it's very volumetric, around 450 gig of attack traffic, but very short on time. So if you have people that trying, to get some pickup or capture file or any kind of, tool to really define the filter, by the time they do it, it's already over and start again. So you need the level of sophistication and the tool to really understand it, detect it, and mitigate it with the right engine, the technology. Okay, move on, the timeline. This is, one way of attack traffic, of campaign of attack, that happens, in January. You see the timeline, approximately 10 days, and this is what happens, and you see the attack length, very short on time. It's not huge, it's not like, 3 hours or multiple days. 4 minutes, another 4 minutes, 5 minutes, but multi-vector, different vectors of attack, TCP connection flood, SYN flood, DNS, bot attack, all level of attacks, every couple of days. You see the first two on 5th of January, then 3 days later, 2 days later, 3 types of attacks, then move forward with others. But you see the vectors. So if you have a DDoS attacks, or if you have, a DDoS mitigation device, it will maybe will be able to mitigate the UDP and the, let's say, layer 3, layer 4 based attacks, network based attacks. But the DDoS appliance or the DDoS server will not be able to deal with bot attacks or DNS, okay? Or if it doesn't have the right engine, UDP fragmentation, you will need to have to create your own signature. And that's, operational overhead, and takes a lot, a lot of resources from your engineers. If you have the right engine, and from Radware we have talked about, and our recent presentation from yesterday, the level of the sophistication and technology that we use, AI, behavioral technology, are doing 100% automatically. So you don't need to create your own custom signature or user-defined signatures. The engine is be able to detect, learn the protocol, and create a real-time signature on the fly, without any need to, to do configuration during the attack. Okay. Moving forward to Operation Israel, the attack also on the infrastructure. Again, the bad actors, mysterious team, anonymous, that creates anonymous event that creates very high sophisticated attacks. So again, these are not volumetric ones. Can be also volumetric, but mostly they claim to be, to do the intelligence, research on the application, and then target the application with the vulnerability and the weakest point that they find in the application. Can be again the front end and the back end. All categories, all the sectors, business and economy, travel, government, all sectors. This is again another angle from the from our portal. So you see also network-based attacks with a lot of traffic that going into the application and the infrastructure and the network. Burst attacks, highest, around 400 gig of attack traffic. This is the accumulated, value of the attack over time. So you see, this one, for example, 134 gig of attack traffic. Overall, it was over half tera. Okay? Moving forward, showing the portal. I want to move fast to really show you the new wave of attack as we see, and what technology we use in order to mitigate, to detect and mitigate it. So from the portal, you are able to see where the attack comes from, if it's related to geo-mitigation and geo-detection, where the sources are. If the attack is, bot, related to bot, and the classification of the bot, and if it relates to the application, so you see the application security events as well. And so again, from the portal, from our customers that are subscribed to our service, you are able to see on a single pane of glass all of the layers of the attack. If it's network, if it's DDoS, if the application, if it's bot, in one single pane of glass, you see all level of attacks. And in security, it's very important. You don't want to open, different management tools for DDoS and then another one for the application. From one single of management, you see all layers of attacks: network, application, transaction, user level. Okay. The new wave, let's say in the last 6 to 8 months, we see another wave of attacks that are really, let's say, very sophisticated in terms of the detection and the mitigation. So again, application floods are on the rise. Again, infrastructure and application. So yes, we see that 65% of the attacks globally are more on the infrastructure. This is statistic from AWS. And 35% are in the application, but we see the trend that more and more attacks are going into the application. So this is a normal, behavioral or statistic on the request per second, but we see more and more traffic and requests. For example, the very recent one, 4.5 million requests per second. Okay, these are not bits, this is not volume. Application HTTP request per second to specific application. This is huge. This can take down any state machine that you have. The firewall, it doesn't have to be volumetric. The request is very small. It's not the payload. It's not the full TCP connection with a lot of bytes. The request is relatively small. But a lot of requests can take the firewall, can take the load balancer, can take the web application firewall. From the web application firewall, the transaction looks 100% legitimate. Because they are targeting the application, the resource on the application that looks completely legitimate from the web application firewall point of view. Or the firewall. The firewall is really on the network level, so it's completely blind. Okay, so we are talking about encrypted floods. So the network is completely blind in that sense. The web application firewall, if it has the capability, and most of the time it has the capability to decrypt, it takes also a lot of time and a lot of resources from the web application firewall. The transaction itself, the request itself looks legitimate. So you need, you need different way and different mechanism to deal with it. And a lot of, randomization in terms of the HTTP header, X-forwarded form, for example, true IP client, they spoof everything, they randomize everything, the referrer, the user agent, everything looks legitimate but randomized. And we will see an example. We'll see really the techniques they are using. They are using botnets, obviously. Okay, so let's take a closer look on the attack. So you see, this is an example. Could be a TCP dump. This is practically a TCP dump. And you see that the headers that they are using. You see the referrer. Referrer, if you don't know, it's the website that refer to your website, right? If you go from Yahoo or if you go from Google to a website, there is an HTTP header that says where I come from. So they randomize it. So you will not be able to mitigate, to create a signature in order to, or a filter in order to mitigate it or to block it. They randomize, and they don't randomize only the referral. This is just an example. Okay? So you need to really to have a sophisticated, very, let's say, intensive technology to really identify and create a unique pattern based on the headers, even if they are randomized. And we will see how we do it. Okay, so this read HTTP flood attribute characteristics sample. And the tools are, this is what we see in terms of tools. These are attack tools, CC, and others. And we will see now how this tool is really doing it. We see also, some variants and mutation already based on these tools. So these tools are in the wild, but we see, they are developed. They are using other variants already. And you can randomize everything with those tools. You see, get, post, head, all the HTTP method, they are able to use it and randomize the header. Okay? And encrypted, SSL, TLS based attacks. Okay, so the firewall is really clueless in that sense. Okay, so we see, the level of the tools and what, let's say, what headers we are using, different kinds of headers. For example, like I said, user agent, cookies, and we are able to, create a normal baseline for that specific application and a deviation or to see an anomaly from that baseline. We'll take a closer look in a second. So this is the CC tool, attack tool, okay, that you are able to download also from your web, from the internet and simulate these kinds of attacks. So we see, this is just an example, so we see that this tool, you see, always use get slash. Get slash means it requests, the home page, directly to the home page, but this tool is always go to the get slash to get the home page. Then the next attribute, they are using random query argument. Okay? This one. Okay, this is randomized, so you cannot sign it. You cannot create a filter for it because it's randomized. Okay? The next one, they are using random referral. You see, this is bing.com. Yes. So you have here bing.com, and here you have, come on, okay, here you have Google. So different referral. So you are not able to create a signature. And here you have Yahoo. You see, referral, this is the HTTP headers. Okay? When you send the request, when the client, the HTTP browser send the request, it comes with HTTP headers. Okay? Guys, if you have any questions, feel free. It's not a lecture. 5 minutes. Wow. Okay. Another one, random user agent content. User agent is what browser I'm using. This one is, they are randomized. So Mozilla, Apple WebKit, Chrome. Okay? So you are not able to create a signature. Next one. Random accept. So you are not able to create a signature for it as well. Randomized cookie. You want to sign the cookie? You have a bad luck. You are not able to sign the cookie. Okay, to create a signature. So we are able to really create a unique distinguish for the request, because this tool, for example, are using, it always go to the get slash, okay, use one cookie and 0 path elements. Host always exists, user agent exists, so we are able to define what is this tool is doing and create a signature for it, because we also learn the history of the application, how the application behaves. So for example, we know that, just for the sake of the discussion, we are able to see that, 80 or 50% of the users that are coming to my application are using Chrome. Now we see that it's, 95%. So there is an anomaly. This is only the detection part. We will see it in a second, just to give you a bit of an info. Okay, and another, how to assign it 1 to 2 random query argument. You see, that's what it means. The ampersand in, it means another argument. This is the first one, this is the second one. So if we see an anomaly, we see now 10, this is not according to what we learned of the history of the application. Okay, again, connection. So we are able, to do, to create more and more parameters to the application and to the algorithm in order to create a signature and use that filter as a blocking criteria to block the attack. Okay, and this is just one tool. Obviously, there are several others. Let's move fast. So, you see, we are able. So we are able to do a detection and create the anomaly based on the application attributes that we learn during peacetime, obviously. During peacetime, we learn the application attributes, how it behaves. And then we can anticipate a major difference in the application behavior entity, because this is not according to the application attributes that we learned during peacetime. We are collecting that information during peacetime and we create a baseline based on it. Okay, so the first step, which paraphrase headers values were hit by the attackers. Again, we have the application history, all the headers in the history. Does this paraphrase header, meaning is eligible to include in the signature? Again, it's all related to the history, what we learned. And how to build an accurate layer 7 signature in order to block the attacker. Attacker doesn't mean source IP, right? Because source IPs are completely random. Okay? So around 40 possible headers that we are able to use. Any HTTP method, get, post, head, and others. And various elements, on the headers. It can be a cookie, it can be a user agent, it can be anything. Okay? Again, all related to the basics that we create. These are just examples. I will move fast because we don't have time. So these are how it looks, from the life cycle of attack. So the first step is the rate. The rate versus what we have in the baseline. Request per second. So this is the first step in terms of detection. Let's say we divide it into two phases. One phase is the detection. Then once there is a detection, we are able to mitigate, right? You are not able to mitigate if you don't have a detection. So first is the rate. Then the rate invariant. The baseline, the application attributes that they are using, the attacks are using, versus what we have in the baseline. Exactly as we see, not exactly, but similar to what we have in the network, but here it's more sophisticated, much more sophisticated, right? The rate versus rate invariant. What levels of headers and what type of headers they are using compared with the baseline. And then we continue, to see the anomalies based on rate and rate invariant and generate an attack detection, right? This is where we have a detection point. And then we move, once there is a detection point in the system, then we move to the mitigation, characterization phase based on the headers, type of headers, and the values of each header, right? This is where we see, for example, anomaly in user agent. Then we go into deep process to be able to create a signature, dynamic signature, for that specific header. And then we move to the next header. Okay, that's where the mitigation point happens. And we constantly, doesn't mean that we stop here, we constantly proceeding or moving forward for further observation to see whether the attack evolves, change the parameters, so we are able to move to here again and create the right signature. If there is a attack attribution signature. Okay, so this is really in a nutshell, high level, right? There is a huge learning phase here, and it's all algorithm and mathematics. So if I want to simplify it, there is a process where we are learning during peacetime, the baseline. Then we have a detection if there is an attack, right? So layer 7 behavioral detection based on, again, request per second and the rating variant on the headers. And we are able to mitigate it also using the layer 7 signature. So you see the layers of the protection. Then on the DDoS, on the layer 4, layer 3 level, layer 3, layer 4 level, we are able to also create a signature to really reduce the noise on the network level if there is, if it makes sense. If it makes sense and we are able to detect and mitigate it on the network level, we are doing it as well. Because first the network and then the application. Okay, then we are using our feeds, active attackers feed, and bad actors that we collect from our cloud in order to block sources that are actively, in the last 24 hours, actively involved in any kind of attacks. DDoS, web application, bot attacks. We are able to look for the source. We are 100% sure that these sources are bad actors, and we block them automatically, immediately. So there is no need to inspect this traffic from those sources, because we are sure 100% that these are attackers. Okay? And randomize. For example, you cannot use geo-blocking in that sense, right? The attacks on Ukraine comes from Ukraine sources. So if you use geo-blocking, let's say I want to block any sources outside of Ukraine. But attackers are using, Ukraine sources. So geo-mitigation or geo-blocking will not help you here. They created a botnet based on source IPs from Ukraine. Okay, so statistics, from the portal. Again, if you are one of our customers, you are able to log into our portal and see how the application behaves, the request per servant statistics, and the real-time signature. This is the layer 7 signature, so you see the HTTP method, whether they are using get, options, put, the number of queries, argument. If you remember the ampersand, number of query argument on the URL, if there is a cookie, etc., up to 40 parameters. Okay? And a lot of statistics, and you can drill down and get the pickup file from that sense and really look for the evidence that this is a real attack. Okay, so when it comes to Radware solution, I will move fast. These are the challenges. The application have been, evolved and sophisticated and encrypted based attacks. So we talked about all this, and we are short, in expert in people. So we are able basically to create, this is our vision, hope for the best, plan for the worst. We would like to be optimistic, but the reality is different. So this is our state of mind. And we create basically an iron, right, a dome or a virtual, a cyber dome that really, for each kind of threat, there is the protection and the tool to mitigate it, to detect and mitigate it. If it's DDoS, we have the DDoS attacks and the right tool. If it's web attacks, web application, and bot manager. Okay? Bad bots attacks, also related. phone jacking and mage cart of attack, client-side protection. To any kind of threat that you have related to, the data center, Radware is playing in the data center market, whether the data center is physical, virtual, or in public cloud or private, you are able to get all the coverage from a protection point of view, whatever attack threat you have. API protection, bad actors, unwanted IP, known phone jacking, web application, like I said before, and obviously public cloud also to protect the data that you have in public cloud as well. And if you have any doubt, Radware is a leader, in all the industry recognition. So in DDoS, we are a leader. Gigamon from last year, also we are a leader in API, the new category WAP, web application and API protection. So Radware is a strong leader in the industry analysts. This is also from Gartner, API protection. Radware is second. And you can approach us for a free evaluation on the web application firewall, on DDoS, on bot manager, to really see it for yourself and consider one of our solutions. So follow Radware on social network to get more information and intelligence on the cyber attacks. That's it for me. If you have questions, feel free to approach me and I will be happy to help you. Thank you very much for the time.